Jake, have it coming. On Candace camera yet?
There you go. You're on.
Steve, you ready?
Oh, yeah.
Council meeting in session for June 19th of the Centerville City Council. We will start with a roll call to make sure that we have a quorum present, starting at the end with Councilwoman Meekum.
Meekum here.
McEwen here.
Ivy here.
Fillmore.
Jens here.
Let it be noted that all 5 city council members are present. We welcome everybody that's here with us tonight. We will begin the evening with a prayer or a thought, or both, from Councilwoman Ivy.
Our Father in heaven, it is with grateful hearts that we bow before Thee in the beginning of this council meeting. We are so grateful for the freedoms that we enjoy, for the beauties that we have around us, and for the good people that surround us. We're grateful for our city, grateful for those who work here and who volunteer here, grateful for the good spirit that we enjoy among these citizens, and we're grateful for the opportunity to manage public funds and to take care of the citizens of Centerville in the best way we can. We pray for Thy Spirit to attend us, that we can have wisdom, that we can make good decisions, and that we can have Thy guidance as we deal with the difficult decisions of the budget. We pray for Thy blessing upon all those who live and visit here in Centerville, that they can feel of the goodness of these people and that they can have Thy blessings smile upon them. We pray for our first responders as they put themselves in harm's way for us. Wilt Thou protect and bless them. We thank Thee for all that Thou hast given us, and we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. If you'll all stand with me and join in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We apologize for the little late start. We were in a work session before that we'd had going on for a couple hours, but we're glad that we can now get going. And as you can see tonight, we have a big crowd here, and we're excited because we have our youth council here, and we're going to look at the swearing in of the new youth council members. And I'll turn it over to Lisa Summers to let us know the direction we're going and what. Okay.
You bet. We are excited to have a new youth council this year. We actually.
Lisa, could you grab the mic?
Oh, sorry. I thought usually my mom always told me my voice was so loud to be quiet, so I never use a mic, but I'll do it. I will. We're excited to have a new youth council. This year we just added 6 new members. We lost about 12 off of our council, and we replaced 6 positions this year. So we have a small group that need to be sworn in, and then we also have 2 youth council members who are continuing on to an additional 2 years term, Sammy Freeman and Lindsay Richards. And so as I call your names, if you'll come and stand up front, these are our new members joining our council: Mitchell Noble, Ethan, say your last name for us. Burke. Ethan Burke, Zeke Green, Liam Noyce, Anna Moore, and Elizabeth Fawcett. And then we'll also have Sammy Freeman, our new youth mayor. Lindsay Richards is vacationing, so she's not here to be sworn in. And then we'll turn the time over to the mayor, and he will swear you in officially.
Welcome, everyone. I'm pleased to do this and honored. So if you'd all raise your right arm to the square and repeat after me. I do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support, obey, and defend the Constitution of the United States, and the Constitution of the State of Utah, and that I will discharge the duties of my office with fidelity. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, new members of the Youth Council. We expect great things. You're welcome to sit down. I might just mention to the parents and the audience and council, we had 40 applicants this year, and we were only able to take 6 members, and so these represent some of the best of the best. It was a very hard decision for the council to choose. We deliberated a long time, so the responsibility is heavy, new members. You just gotta bring it all to the table. But we're excited to get started and for all of the activities and service opportunities that we're going to have here coming up. We have a street dance coming up in a couple of weeks. That'll be our first kickoff, and then help with the 4th of July. So with that, we'd like to be excused to meet with the parents for a few minutes and give them an overview of the year and get our youth council going.
Is that downstairs?
Yeah. Okay. Ice cream social. I can bring some extra ice cream up later.
Thank you. Thank you, Youth Council, so much for all that you do. Thanks for parents for being here. Okay, we'll move on to the next part of our agenda, which is the open session. This is a time for anyone to come up to either one of these 2 microphones to discuss items of any concern. Try and limit your comments to a couple of minutes. And please state your name and your address for us.
Dale McIntyre, 258 East, 200 South, Centerville. I just wanted to thank the council for putting in the camera and making this meeting available to us over the internet. I hear comments about every 2 weeks, each month, about how there are 1 or 2 or 3 watching, but it's much deeper than that. It provides a history of what's happening, and people look at it sometime other than when this meeting is taking place, and I'm grateful to have it here. Thank you.
Thank you, Dale. And we're pleased to be able to do that. I missed a couple of weeks ago, so I was able to watch it after the fact as well too, which I enjoyed. Anybody else from the public? Any further public comments? If
Mayor, is this just regarding things? I have some comments I'd like to make on an agenda item. Is that, wants to talk now about that?
It's a public hearing, then.
Unless there's a public hearing.
if it's an agenda item that's a public hearing, that will be it'll be open to the public at that point in time for that item. Yeah, these are just discussions that aren't on the agenda. Thank you.
Or the items on the agenda that don't have public hearings as well. This would be the time to comment. Right.
What is the item that you have?
Lease cabling.
Okay, we have that on as a public hearing item. Thank you. All right, anything else for open session? If not, we'll close the open session and we'll move on to item number 2 on our agenda of minutes review and acceptance from the June 5th, 2018 minutes. Any further discussion on those changes?
Move that we approve those minutes as written in the staff report.
Second.
We have a approval and a second. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Sounds like that passes unanimously. Okay, next is item number 3. This is the public entity resolution for the public treasurer investment funds. Lisa, did you want us to give us some background on this?
Yes, thank you. Mayor and council, the city treasurer requested that I bring this matter before the city council. She was directed by the Office of State Treasurer to All cities are required now to actually have a written resolution from the city council designating persons or employees within the city that are authorized to access and make transactions on our PTIF, or the, what is it actually called? The Public Treasurer's Investment Fund. And so the state would like to have written record, and if we ever want to change those designations, we have to bring it back to the council and have you approve another resolution and then send that on to them. I think this is just a matter of transparency and security as the state moves forward with its online programming. So staff just recommends you adopt Resolution 2018-19, designating authorized employees to access and transact with the PTIF accounts.
We received in advance that resolution number 2018-19. Is any further discussion on that resolution?
And I should make a note that Councilmember McEwen did make a suggestion to that resolution, which I've provided on Novus, an updated resolution just to define PTIF so we all know what we're talking about. So I did change, just define that term in the first whereas clause.
You did, yes, I
Yes.
noticed that.
Everything else remains the same.
And that's a good catch and improvement, and I'll move that we approve resolution number 2018-19 as explained.
We got a motion to approve resolution number 2018-19, 2018-19, a second. Do we need a roll call vote on this, Lisa, on this one?
Yes, please.
So it's any resolution, right?
Aye.
Okay. Councilman Meekum?
Aye.
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 Resolution passes 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 4, this is the public hearing item. This is the public hearing naming of a natural park on First South. Do we have any presentation from staff or council members on this?
None from staff. I mean, this was a council
Yeah,
initiated
this is,
item.
right. So, before I open to a public hearing?
I would just open the public hearing and see what we get.
Okay. So this is a public hearing that I'm going to open up, the naming of the natural park on 100 South. And this is open to the public. This would be your time to be able to comment on that. State your name and your address.
Good evening. My name is J.R. Knight. I live at 351 East, 200 South here in Centerville. I've been a resident here for 38 years. And my neighbor, Lee Scavelin, Lee and Dixie Scavelin, have been neighbors for residents here for 30 years. So I just am here to speak on behalf of Lee Scavelin and in favor of, encourage you to vote in favor of this action. Lee Scavelin was a great citizen of Centerville for all those years. He was always, I don't know how many times he knocked on my door, you know, petitioning this or that or encouraging people to get out and vote. And in addition to that, he was a great neighbor. He was always, the day that he passed away, he'd been out mowing other people's lawns and, you know, helping in lots of different ways. So it was a real loss for our community to lose him as a citizen and resident and friend. So I'd like to encourage you to seriously consider this on the agenda. Okay. I also want to express my concern, Mr. Mayor. Those of us that lived here the last, that were here in 1983 when that flood occurred and that water was coming out of that canyon, I'm really concerned that I understand you guys or the county's going to sell 2 of those lots or has already sold 2 of those lots. That's a scary thing to me, to remember those boulders rolling down that road for 2 or 3 week period when we had that flood. And boy, I don't know. As a citizen, I'm a little concerned. I realize that's probably too late and after the fact, but just for the record.
Okay.
Well, Mayor, JR, are you aware that the debris basin has been built upstream?
I am,
And so it has a controlled outlet of certain size.
That's what I understand. Is it going to be the the concern I have, Steve, is that going to be able to contain, just knowing, seeing boulders that high going down that?
Oh, yeah. Well,
Is it
if
gonna
it's coming down upstream of that concrete dam, yeah, it'll be contained,
Okay.
yeah.
Obviously, you guys feel comfortable with that then? Okay, all right. Thank you.
Not all of us, but we got overridden by the county, and it was their property, and it's their responsibility to control the floods.
How did that end up to be the county property? How did we, as a city, give that to them, or how did that, what put them in control to sell those lots, may I ask?
They owned the property.
They bought the property from the city after the '83 floods for the purpose of constructing that facility, that basin that you see there.
I see, that was their responsibility
And
to,
then later on, and during my time here, is when the county stepped up and paid nearly $2 million towards the concrete debris basin upstream.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
thank you.
you're aware, council members fought very hard to keep, the county was going to do away with the whole, almost all the debris basin and put more homes in there. And we fought very hard, and our staff met with them, and we were able to negotiate them getting the 3 lots and then the debris basin coming back to us. So we felt very pleased considering where we were and what we ended up with. We ended up with way better than we could have done.
Good,
So we
good.
did stand up for you.
All right, well, thank you, because it was a scary time.
It
those
was
of
a
us who were
scary
around.
time. I was there in
Yeah.
the boots.
Thank you very much. We're glad we have you as representatives.
Thank you, JR. Further comments on this public hearing matter?
Dale McIntyre's, same address. I've known Lee Scaplin for quite a while. I considered him a dear friend. Lee, I don't know how many times Lee's called me on the phone to discuss matters of public concern, often politics, usually politics, but he was a doer. He was one who went out and made things happen. Now, I'm grateful for that man, and I miss him a lot. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Dixie Scablin. I live 466 East, 200 South in Centerville. When I was told that the city was considering naming the park after my husband, I was overwhelmed, as I think he would have been. He loved our community. He loved nature. And he was so concerned that we were going to lose that touch of nature with more houses. I'm sorry, but he went up and down the street knocking on neighbors' doors to find out what their feeling was about what was going on with that park. It was important to him. There were times before all this was in the air that Lee and some of the other members of our ward went up and maintained that area. They trimmed the grass, they cut out dead limbs. It was important to have a place for people to go. I live on that street and I see the traffic and the people that walk up and down our street, and they may go up or they may come down, but they don't do both. And that's because they were going through that area as an access. Now they have to hike to do it. I'm grateful that we at least get half the street, but I would just say that my husband would be honored, we would too, but he really stood for correct principles, and it was so important to keep that part of nature in our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, Dixie, and sorry for your loss. We appreciate you. Any further comments for the public hearing? If not, I will close the public hearing then and see if there's any further response, comments from council.
I just want to say that I am fully supportive of the naming of the park. I think that Lee Scablin made a difference in this community more than a lot of people did. I think he truly did care, and he truly did stand for correct principles. And he was a great teacher to me, and he was amazing. And I'd just like to thank him and thank his wife for sharing him with us. And I'd be honored to have his name up on the basin. I can't think of anything more deserving.
I'm just going to go down the line, I guess. I am completely in agreement. You know, one of the things that I distinctly remember that Lee would do is he would donate his time to anything that he could relative to the city. If we all recall when we took our hike up on the hillside, Lee was right there lending his professional experience at no thought of compensation. He was, hey, if you need help, I will be there. And so when we honor residents who in our city, I can't think of a more deserving individual in terms of what he did for his city, for his community, for his nation. So I am in full support of this resolution.
Likewise, Lee was a mentor to me. It's his fault that I sit here, and he knows that. And I appreciate him and the things he's done. But I want you to know that as the council was looking at those fences up there on that property when the county fenced it off, I figured it was kind of a done deal. It wasn't our land. The county had fenced it off, and they were going to do something else with it. But Lee called me up and took me on a tour and chewed me out and explained to me that taking this line down was not the appropriate thing, and that this open space that was natural, that wasn't an improved park that was going to take a lot of city funds, but that was natural, where we could have a little piece of how it really is here without our interference, was important to Centerville. And through his encouragement, sometimes very strong encouragement, I felt like this was something we needed to fight for. And I fully attribute to him the motivation for pushing back and arranging with the county so that we could keep half of it. So I'm fully in support of naming this part after him, since he's the one who, in my estimation, caused it to happen.
I will say that,
Go ahead.
activism is one thing, which Lee was a fantastic example of, but fact-based activism is a much more effective thing, which Lee was also a great example of. So I always appreciated him sharing his knowledge, years of experience, and specific understanding of things with us.
There's not much more to say. I'll just let it go at that. I guess maybe I will make the resolution. Mayor, I would move that we approve Resolution 2018-22, proposing the name of the space on 100 South between 5th and 7th East as the Lee Scablin Wildlands Park.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on it?
We can adopt the resolution separately, but we had talked about potentially putting together a fund to put some signage on that. So once we finish the vote on the resolution, I'd like to talk about that for just a second to make sure we cover that.
Okay, if there's no further discussion on it, then let's vote. Starting with Councilman Entz.
Aye.
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 Resolution passes 5-0. So,
So the second part is just a direction to staff to accept funds for donations for a sign to be placed with the name as stated in the resolution. I'll be the first donor, so let me know when you're ready, Steve, to take some funds.
so are you making a proposal then to accept funds from the community
Yes.
for a sign for the park? Okay. Are we?
How would that work? Would that be something that the community foundation would take care of?
Well, the community foundation would have to decide to take that on. Donations can come either to the foundation or to the city, either way, and get the tax exemption on them. If you want it to come through the foundation, we can just designate it as such. Your chair of your foundation probably would prefer that.
The foundation's pretty stretched at this point in time. I would propose that we put something on the website soliciting donations. I'll let George do the first one, I'll do the second one.
Third.
I don't think we need to do an extremely expensive sign. I'd like to have someone from the staff figure out what a good wood plaque sign with some posts would be. I think that would be appropriate. And then we hopefully have it up by mid to late summer.
So I'm in agreement, just as long as, Steve, we can find some way to make that available so people know how to donate. So whether that's on the website or otherwise, I'm fine with that.
I'd like to see it on the website and in the utility newsletter, because a lot of the people from that area are on the website.
No, good point. Good point.
We do have someone available who, or someone present who has a fair following. So Dale, maybe you could put something in your newsletter. Thank you.
So we would be we could advertise through the website, but we don't have a manner to pay directly through the website. But
they'd have to come in to
come in or mail it in. Or, yeah.
I'd like that, and like I said, I'd like it in the
we can put it in the utility bill.
Utility bill, because I think a lot of people in that area that would want to donate don't even know how to get on our website.
Okay.
And we don't have Lee to go door to door to tell them, so. Put the word out there.
Pop up to the mic so people can hear you that are watching it or will watch it.
Sorry, I think that if we had some kind of an estimate, I think we could raise the money in our, I'm sure we could raise the money in our neighborhood in a hurry, rather than put any additional pressure on city funds. We'd be happy to put it together.
Great.
We'll get a cost estimate, a design concept, and a cost estimate.
Okay.
I'm fairly certain we can raise this through private funds.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. All right. I don't think we need any motion or anything on that. It's great. Fantastic.
Mayor?
Yes.
On the topic of signs for parks, is there any chance that we could have it say Smith Park by the time we get there on the 4th of July?
So I've been thinking about that. I've got somebody that's willing to change the wood sign to Smith Park, and I've got the family. We're trying to come up with $4,000 to $5,000 to replace that, but we won't be able to get that done obviously before the 4th. So if it's okay with everybody, I'll just get the wood part of it changed for now, and then we'll proceed on with the other.
So what?
Sorry to deviate to the other part.
You've been working on that, and I was contacted by Dean Smith, a family member who that I've been on a board with, and he was saying, hey, the family's ready to raise this fund, so
Correct.
It sounds like we both have a contact. Steve and I in one of our meetings talked about, did we ever get a proposal back, Steve,
From Dan.
on signs and what they would cost? Remember we were having...
I have
Dan.
a proposal that was $4,000 to $6,000 to put one in similar to Freedom Hills.
Sorry, we just jumped to a different park. I apologize for that.
This is how our brains
We've
work.
got signage issues.
We haven't seen anything back yet on that.
If not from Dan on that one, I got a response from him on another matter on the RDA agenda, but not on
Remember,
that
it was Dan met with us and gave us that. I have the papers that he gave us and the proposal.
one. Did he give us some cost numbers?
Uh-huh.
I can't even remember that.
Yeah, he gave it to us. I
Well, it
have
sounds like we have those cost numbers.
Mm-hmm.
So are you saying you will go ahead and get the wood sign changed?
Yes, if that's
Robin?
okay with everybody.
I
You
think
just
that
don't
would
want
be
it to look like
tremendous.
an act of vandalism. You actually want permission to take the sign down.
Well, I just didn't want to surprise everybody.
I think it's great.
Make sure the chief knows.
Okay.
Okay, great. Any further discussion on
Parks.
parks and naming? Thank you, everyone that was here. It sounds like this is going to be a great activity up there with the Lee Scablin Wildlands Park. So if there's no further discussion there, we'll move to item 5 on our agenda. And this is the financial report for the 11-month period ending May 31st. And we have Marcus to present that. Thanks again, everyone that came.
All right, well, thank you.
Are we sure Marcus can present? It's before 9 p.m.
Yeah, this is kind of different, isn't it?
If you talk slowly.
Okay, I'll talk, yep. So May 31st financial statements. We have one more month left to go. We're 92% of the year is over. We'll jump right into the cash position. I mean, it's still the three main funds that have the majority of the cash. The general fund, most of that is restricted, and we'll see that on the next page. And there's a transportation fund. That one increased quite a bit compared to last month, and that was because the Class C road money came in. That comes in every other month. Then the other fund is the drainage fund, and that's funds reserved for other capital projects that will be coming.
We have ambitious plans for use of funds in both those,
the
monies in both those funds,
yeah, so there's
which we've talked to the council about.
Lots of projects that are needed with that money. The recreation department in cash, it increased quite a bit, and that's from the summer rec revenue. The RAP tax went down quite a bit, but that's just money loaned over to the park fund to pay for that community park project. And water fund, I want to talk about that on the next page, but overall cash is about the same as last month. PTIF interest rate continues to increase, so that's good. But yeah, if we go to the next page, we can see the restrictions on cash. So the general fund, there's $719,000 in the cash bond deposits. The DUI funds has $12,000, and then the gun range. RDA has the theater reserve money. And that just continues to increase unless the theater allows us to spend money out of that account.
Well, it's the council that makes the decision about spending that.
Okay. Yeah. Isn't it a separate board that does that?
Well, it'll be the RDA
okay.
board, which is this group.
Okay.
Makes that decision.
The water fund, a couple things we've been working on the last month or so with Jake and Steve and Kevin, the city engineer, are related to impact fees and bond deposits in the water fund. So we've determined that we feel that all the impact fee money in the water fund has been spent. So that's why there's no restriction on impact fee for the water fund. You'll see that the whole $301,179 in the water fund is restricted in that category of cash, bonds, deposits. And the reason for that, I mean, I talked about this a little bit before, but there's construction projects where developers will pay the money in, and then the city either hires contractors to come in to do the projects, and then whatever extra money's left over is refunded back to these developers. And during this year, fiscal year 18, there were a couple, well, several of them, but two big ones that came in. One was about $260,000, and none of that money has been spent. There's another project, about $60,000, and about $40,000 of that had been spent. And so the money that's, as the city's holding, that hasn't been used has to be restricted. And Kevin tracks that, the engineer, and so we've been going through that with him. And so in the water fund, when you do that, I mean, kind of the idea for the hope for the water fund by the end of the year was to break even, to have, you know, about zero as the unrestricted cash. At the end of May, with those deposits, they're about 24,000 negative. So you can see the due to, due from on the right column there.
That could break even by the 12th month.
Yeah, that's
possible.
what we're hoping,
Yeah.
is that break even at the 12th month.
And if you're moving on, let's expand upon that a little bit,
Okay, yeah.
Marcus, before you move on. Let's go back in time a little bit to give you some historical perspective here. 2 years ago, when Marcus was our auditor, instead of our CPA advisor, he helped us to understand that our water fund had a significant negative cash balance. You might remember this conversation. I know Bill will, because Bill was involved in the smaller group discussions with the auditor about this with Marcus. I think it was around the neighborhood of $600,000 to $700,000.
Right.
And so we realized that we had to start climbing out of that hole. The rate increases that you approved, I should say a council 2 years ago, some of you approved 2 years ago, the 3-step increase.
It was all of us.
The same group? Okay, 2 years ago, that's right. It would have been this whole group of council members. Has enabled us to climb out of that, and at the same time pays about $700,000 for that Main Street, major water main replacement on Main Street. So, I mean, we'd be out of the hole already if we had not undertaken that project, but that project needed to be undertaken because of the resurfacing that's going to occur on Main Street this next year. It was going to be this year, now it's next year. The rate increases have definitely enabled that, and those rate increases will enable us to start building that reserve towards other replacement projects in the future.
All right. Any questions about that, or cash as a whole? Also, one other thing I was going to point out is, I mean, the RAP tax and the park fund, you'll see the due to, due from is, I mean, getting bigger. It's $350,000. We've been evaluating these funds kind of combined together, but just so you know, on the end of year financial statements, they are split out as separate funds. And so that park fund will have a deficit fund balance because of this due to, due from. When you loan money over, it creates a liability, which will create a deficit fund balance. I mean, the RAP tax fund will have that, you know, the other side, the positive fund balance. So in total, they match out, but at the end of the year, it'll be like that. The only way we wouldn't have a deficit fund balance is if, well, two ways, I guess. The RAP tax could just transfer it over, but we wanted to do it this way, this due to, due from, and then the park impact fee money can pay it back over time. But just so you're aware that there would be a deficit fund balance in that fund.
There's two.
If we collect that 500, it won't, will it?
Well, that's just where I was going. There's two things that will happen in June that will be reflected on the next report that he'll show you. One is a significant progress payment on the phase 3, probably payment of most of what remains will be paid on that. And then offsetting that, there will be $500,000 loan from the rec district, which we will receive next week. So I don't think, so the negative amount will be less than this.
Yeah. So if we did get that rec money, I was hopeful that it would come in, but I didn't know it was going to come in next week. But yeah, $500,000 would go to revenue, and so that would offset that. But then if there are additional expenditures before the end of June,
I think it'll be $200,000 or $300,000
so it
in
would still be in a deficit
payments
position
on that phase 3 still.
Okay.
But not quite as much. So,
But that deficit
is offset by the RAT.
is not a critical issue.
No. I mean, it'd probably be brought up in the audit. It would probably be a state compliance item that the audit would bring up.
So do we
Even
resolve that?
Even though it was a planned deficit with internal financing?
Yeah, I mean, there is a way around it.
If the council had a formal action to approve that interfund loan, does that eliminate the non-compliance?
No, I mean, what would is if you, for fiscal year 19, in the original budget, if you budgeted a transfer from a RAP tax fund into here, say, oh yeah, we know there's a negative, we've got this transfer in our budget set aside to fix that negative amount, that deficit fund balance. But it's, yeah, auditor, I mean, that just comes from the state auditor's office, that deficit fund balance, they want you to bring that up as a finding. So it would show up there, unless it was covered this year, or we had in our budget a transfer to correct that.
So you better stick around for the adoption. Well, that's not going to happen tonight, so.
Yeah, I'll be
We
here.
need to address, look at the proposed budget for the tentative budget and the proposed revisions for the Parks Capital Improvement Fund, and see if we have addressed that so that we can meet that requirement in our new budget that you're talking about.
Okay, yeah. And if we move on to the next page, looking at this, I mean, for 11 months, I mean, Steve and Jake did a good job on budgeting. I mean, we're overall revenues are, you know, pretty right on. Expenses, I mean, they've done a great job. I mean, there's a few amendments, but overall, it's been good. You'll see the general fund is at 94%. I mean, the goal is around 92%, so we're a little ahead. I mean, where we're ahead, we know, is the little bit on the sales tax and then on the property tax. The franchise tax are a little bit low, but not terrible. And then licenses and permits are also a little low. But other than that, I mean, the budget to actually, it looks good. But any questions on the revenues in the general fund? And then on the expenditure side, I mean, we're at 86%, so a little bit under. We have mentioned before that June is normally a bigger month just because we're going to get invoices in July and August that relate to this fiscal year, and so we'll have to accrue those back in. And so, but it seems like we should be ahead overall by the end of the year, which will increase that fund balance. And
do you have what we were a month ago? The comparable number to the 86? You got it close and easy?
Yeah, I've got it. Let's see. So in April, we were, on the expenditure side, we were 77%. So if you go 10 divided by 12, so our estimate was 83.
So we came up 7. If we were to come up another 9 or 10, we're still significantly positive or favorable.
I think we came up 9, didn't we, from 77 to 86?
So, Marcus?
Yeah.
Yeah,
you're right, 9.
We're at 92% of the year, 11 months, and we're 86% total expenditure. So, yeah, I agree with you. That's close. Do we get concerned about any of the line items that may be significantly different? Yeah, for what you're doing, or is that just something in our budgeting process that you use for?
So we've gone through this. That's with the budget amendment at the end of the year, because sometimes things don't happen exactly as you planned, and so this budget, we met and kind of went through and said, okay, we need to move some line items from here to here, and so that's what the budget amendment will do, to kind of true that up and make it more what actually happened. So
next item on the agenda.
Right.
Yeah.
But what the state compliance is they want you to be within budget by department. So it's not necessarily every line item, because several of these line items would be related to police, or youth councils in a different line item. So several of these are combined into more than one departments, and so we don't need to by every line item, but by department we should be. And when an auditor comes in, all they're checking to see is if you're within budget by the fund. So as long as the whole fund is under budget, then you're okay. But state law, they want you to by department. So any questions about the general fund? All right, so let's
Marcus,
move.
on that second page, can you just tell me what the Parks and Recreation facility that's over 114%?
Let's see.
I can let you
What
know
is
what that is. That is, we were actually putting all of the expense for the internet, the UIA connection, into City Hall. So we were actually able to split that out between the various buildings. So what's charged there is actually the parks as well as the Parks and Rec facility itself.
I thought that Utopia was supposed to be free to the city, that we weren't paying an ISP fee.
That's what I thought.
That's what I thought.
Well, no, it's not the case.
We're paying about $1,200 a month. That's what it's been.
I think if you go
For
back and
years.
look at the records when we first got it, when we very first signed up for it, Utopia told us that the city and the parks would have Utopia for free.
That does sound very familiar.
Now, they may have interpreted it as no connection fees for the Utopia connection, but I, as a member of the public, I interpreted that there would not be an ISP fee associated with that.
Well, there's been a fee for years. I don't know what point it was put in, but
I wonder if it was under the original, but when we went from Utopia to UIA, we lost that benefit.
I don't know.
Possibly.
I don't know, I'm just speculating. I still think it's worth going back and looking at.
Is it worth having Lisa do some research on that, legal document-wise? Do we have, or from them?
I doubt there's any legal document. I think it might be for one
I'm
of our.
not sure if that's a document or if that was just sales while they were presenting for
maybe.
council.
I think it
I
might
can
be.
check the interlocal agreements. That would be the only place that
She
it
she
would be.
could check those, but I would, beyond that, I would suggest one of our representatives to either Utopia or UIA
Yeah, I could
ask
do
the
that.
question.
Georgia and I can do that as well.
So that's what bumped it up, the
Yeah, that's what
14% over
but
the,
You see City Hall's pretty low. That's because of that.
So it's
Because
been
you split it up.
reallocated
It's been
among
reallocated
the
to where
several
it should be.
budgets, and you're going to have an amendment to address this.
Yeah, and there is an amendment for that.
okay.
Okay, so yeah, if we go to the next page to the RDA fund, I mean, not much has changed there. We got the taxes in April, and that's, you know, we're not going to get any more on the tax revenue, the property tax. The lease payment, they paid a month early, so they've already paid June. That's why that's higher. On the expenditure side, I mean, it's just the budgeted contractual agreement, the admin services, and then the budgeted transfers is what makes up those expenditures in the RDA fund. The recreation fund, I mean, they're still collecting summer rec program. I mean, it's a little behind, but money's still coming in, so we'll see how that ends up at the end of the year. And then the miscellaneous revenues, concession revenue for the baseball games. The expenses is just the cost to run those programs. The RAP tax revenue, I mean, it's right on target at the 92%. The expenditure side is mostly just transfers to the parks, to Whitaker and the Davis Performing Arts Center. Cemetery, not a whole lot of activity there. Go to the next page, no change in the debt service fund. I mean, the payment's been made. All that's left is we need to pay that trustee fee of $2,500.
Oh, that's been paid.
Oh, has that
this
been
month.
paid now?
Yeah, last
Okay,
week.
so that's been paid
That's
in
been
June. And in the park fund, the revenue there is impact fee, transfer from RDA, RAP, and then the Tingy Pavilion revenue there for the $50,000. And the expenditures, all the phase 2 and phase 3 of the community park. The transportation fund, we're right on target with the Prop 1 money, the Class C, and then the transfers. It's not a whole lot on the expenditure side, but those projects are.
Most of the
coming.
expenditures you see there were for the projects that carried over from last year. And most of this year's contract, the 2 contracts for street work, most of that will carry over into the new fiscal year as well. So we'll be looking at this budget for next year to see if we need to amend it for the transportation fund as we award in 2019. But we've got enough budget authority here to cover whatever's spent out of the current street contracts for this year. We don't need to amend the budget.
And then the Utopia Fund, I mean, it's just right, transfers coming in and then the payment, and so it's right on budget, nothing out of the ordinary there. The next page, we go to our enterprise funds. See that line 1 is the charges for service, and so that's where that restricted money has come in. And then lines, it kind of mixed in 8 through 11. I mean, that's where the expenditures go out. Some of those projects are city related, other ones are related to the projects that the developers have put in. Overall operating is line 4, and we're at 96%. The operating expenditures is line 7, and that's at 89%. So as far as the operating, it's you know, doing pretty well compared to the budget. Sanitation fund is right on target at the 93% on the revenue for operating, and then the 89% on the expenditure side. The drainage fund, the line 3 is operating revenue. It's right at 93%. The expenditures is low, but that we said that money's for capital projects coming up.
Yes.
So, and then the telecom fund, I mean, the money came in, but just the timing of the payables, the expense didn't go out for May, so I'm sure it did early in June, but we'll see too in June.
And we'll have a budget amendment here
For this one.
for this one.
So, yeah, to bump up that budget a little on the expense side. Then the next page is the Whitaker Fund. The revenue is mostly transfers from the RAP tax fund in the general fund, and then a little bit of event revenue. The expenditure side is employees, salary benefits, utilities, and then the parking lot and the restoration project. And there's some budget amendments for this fund as well. But any questions about the May financials? Okay, well, thank you.
Thanks, Marcus.
Yeah.
So a month from now, we'll have a whole year in, right?
Yeah,
And
I
we
mean,
started an audit after that?
I mean, it's preliminary. I mean, because we'll have to, we'll have a June financial out, but then we'll have more to add to it because the payables are going to come in. We'll be working on the fixed assets to true up depreciation expense. So there's some things we'll have to wait, and so we won't really get good, solid June numbers till September, early September, by the time we get in all those invoices and
That's because you're for the audit, right?
yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, so
Thanks for all you do.
yeah, thank you.
You can get home and see your
Oh, I'm going to
children
stick
tonight.
around for these budget amendments.
Oh,
I asked him to
great.
stay.
Happy to have you.
Yeah.
Great. All right, well, next we'll move to item 6 on our agenda, the amended fiscal year 18 budget. Steve, we'll let you address that.
Yeah, I'm going to actually let Jake do most of it, but keep this in mind as he goes through these budget amendments. It's not so important that it's not critical that we amend all the revenues to match what we think it's going to end up being. So we haven't tried to do that. It's critical that on the expenditure side, we make amendments that will keep a department total from being exceeded by the actual expenditures. Okay, so Jake, if you want to, we gave you a handout in the earlier meeting that we want you to refer to as same thing he's putting up on the board, the screen.
Okay, so some of these are similar to ones we discussed for the next year's budget. This first one being one of those, the bank and investment interest. So we increased that amount on the revenue side, and we also have an offsetting one in the management services line item, and you'll see that later on here. So we increased it from $8,000 to $15,000 to compensate for. There's almost $7,000 that we've paid out on that cash bond interest. So that's what that is there. Miscellaneous contributions, these are donations that we've received for parks and for the police. So we budgeted 0, we're putting in that 12,425, and that's partially there to offset the expense for that donation, and you'll see that further down. Council contingency, these are the 2 adjustments that have, well, one that you guys approved a while ago is the personnel transfer, and that was for the increases for the payoffs, the retirements, those sorts of things. And that got moved over to that personnel contingency line. That's where that goes there. And then this other one is the 14,135. And you're going to see that number. We have to work that through the budget because we received a lower increment from the RDA to help pay for that Utopia debt service. So the proposal here is to make up for some of it here, and then we got to adjust the transfer and the RDA transfer and all that, and you'll see that later. So here's that personnel contingency.
Just a second, Jake. I just want to make sure everybody on the council understands that what is being used from the RDA is what we call the additional tax increment, the haircut increment, okay? If you got any questions, you can ask, but we'll assume you understand that.
Right, so here's the personnel contingency, and it's being reduced to 7,450 because it's being moved down to these salary lines. You see this here. We discussed, was that a couple months ago, 3 months ago? So these are the changes here in each of the different salary line items.
The big increases are attributable to retirements.
Yeah, it's mostly retirement. You see the
three departments at least: police, executive, management services.
Yeah, Marcia and the executive.
So why the big negative or the big reduction in court salary and wages based on the prior conversation?
That's actually a move.
Oh, it's just a move.
Yeah, from full-time to part-time. That's all that is there.
Beg your pardon.
Yeah, that's what that one is there. Now, if you go into these other adjustments, there's the cash bond interest expense. The management services department added that in. And then we have here there's a special projects. Remind me what that one was, Steve.
Let's see, what's 4135?
Yeah,
that was the city attorney's budget that we got.
That's right. Sorry, this is our balancing line. Sorry, Lisa. So
we put 5,000 in her budget that shouldn't have been put in there. Or maybe
well,
she...
not necessarily. We were trying to finish up the subdivision ordinance. That was the additional line item, and we're just going to do with that in-house this year.
Yeah.
Lisa's making a sacrifice for the team.
Yeah.
Lisa.
And so the next one's elections. Well, that's all we spent on elections this last year. So we were able to reduce that down to that 7,378. Here we have that 17,000 for some of the donations. They also received some grant money, so they've spent about that much. So we're moving it from 0 to 17,000 to help balance the police department's budget there. Animal control, there was that mid-year increase. So that's what this is here, as well as the South Davis fire. That's the increase there. And then engineering services, both of those there are actually coming in higher than we had budgeted. So we're making up the difference there. Utilities, for some reason, we've still got to find out why. The gas bill out of the parks department is high. So we had to increase it by 1,000. And then here again, here's another one, the internet, the professional services. You saw that before. That's the one that threw the Parks and Recreation facility out of balance. So this is going to make it so it's in balance here. And then we have the transfer to sanitation fund. This is one that we budgeted for, but we don't need to. Sanitation fund is whole. And
Jay, can I just ask one question?
Yeah.
What do we use gas in the parks for?
Well, it's for the Parks and Recreation facility as well, the maintenance building as well.
Maintenance building.
It's their maintenance building
I was
as well.
just curious if
and
we were
those
using
sheds.
the parks or what.
So, it's heated during the winter. Now I'm not sure what they use it for.
Okay.
And let me pause on the transfer to the sanitation fund. Hopefully you recall that normally we were budgeting 41,000 transfer from general fund to the recreation fund. And instead, we saw the potential for needing that over in the sanitation fund to balance that. So we actually only transferred 10,000 of the 41 to the recreation fund, and budgeted as if the 31,000 difference was going to go to the sanitation fund so that we could address the issue that Marcus raised about the state auditors. If you have a negative fund balance, you're supposed to show in the next year that you're budgeting to cover that negative, to make up that negative. So we budgeted the 31,000 transfer for that purpose, but as it's turning out, we don't have to use that 31,000 transfer there. We can keep that in the general fund. Is that, remember that conversation, I hope? Did I get that right, Marcus?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So it'd be the same
scenario.
For the RAP tax and park fund. That's one way to get around that.
Yeah.
Be in compliance with that.
Yeah.
And then that bottom one, we see that $14,135 for the transfer to the fund, the Utopia Fund, to pay for that debt service. So that's where it goes there. So it comes out of the council contingency into this transfer Utopia there. Bottom line, they both net at $19,425, both on the revenue side and the expenditure side. So we still have a balanced budget, and there's no increase to the general fund.
Well, no net increase.
No net increase.
Yeah,
Right.
in expenditures, yeah.
So this is what Marcus was talking about, getting each of the departments balanced. That's what this is here for these adjustments. So before I go on, any questions on those? This is all general fund here.
I do have a question / concern, since we have budgeted contingency for retirements. What does our overlap look like in terms of coverage? Are we looking at 90-day periods for shadowing on positions, and how are we covering that? Because this only covers the retirement portion, and as far as the contingency that we've talked about for personnel. What are we doing to bring on extra staff who are going to be transitioning?
Are you talking about the next fiscal year?
Well, I'm assuming that we're budgeting for this
This is amendments to the current budget.
Right. So it just brings up the question is, when we go into this next one, I want to preface that, because this is tickling the interest of, as we do these retirements going forward, I just want us to be able to address that and what the transitional periods are going to look like.
Okay, in the park fund here, well, first, is there any other questions on that, on the general fund? Okay. Park fund here, again, we see this, this is the transfer in for the RAP tax here. The park fund, as well as the RAP tax fund, they're both being amended to match. We had zeros on those, but obviously we're receiving revenue on those, so we've just updated those numbers with what those are. And then down below, this is the actual phase 2 is about 470,000, just underneath that. And then phase 3, 589,350. So, and you can see again, those both come out to that 1,009,350.
That's where you see the $500,000 loan from the rec district.
From the rec district, that one's in there. Transportation fund.
So, if I may, park fund, where are we with the perpetual care fund and the money that came in this year? And my recollection is we were going to be sure that about half of that 80% was left into the, was it 80?
80 was going to be transferred, 80% to the general fund is what the council directed.
Yeah, so where are we on that transfer?
We're just waiting to the end of the year, and we'll transfer the
actual number
80% at that time.
Okay, do we need a resolution to do that?
I think it's on record as a.
Yeah, I think it's only if it was more than that.
And you've approved the budget.
Marcus, you'd better be at the mic. Thanks.
In the original budget, there was a budgeted transfer to budget to move money from the perpetual care fund into the general fund, and that would be to cover the expenditures that's being paid out of the general fund. I can
I think we decided it was probably sufficient to cover what we estimate that transfer will be, right?
So the transfer budgeted from the Cemetery Perpetual Care Fund is $26,800. And we haven't made any of that transfer because we wanted to kind of evaluate it at year end to see how much or.
Well, it's based on the revenue. It's 80%
okay.
of that revenue. So
And
once
then
we
how
actually
much
know what
is
that revenue is.
what's the revenue year-to-date at this point?
So Bill's question is, will our budget amount for that transfer be sufficient to cover the anticipated transfer?
Well, and also, where are we in the perpetual care?
We're just under, what was it?
Right here. Revenues to date, the budget estimate was that we would receive $33,500 in the perpetual care fund, and that we would transfer $26,800 of that back to the general fund. Through 11 months, we have $27,000 approximately of that $33,500.
So we're a little shy of.
Yeah, so I think we'll be okay on the budget numbers there. And we transfer the 80%, whatever that is.
And we'll do 80 as opposed to the 26.
Yeah, we'll do the
80% as
80%,
opposed to the 26.
Yeah, whatever the 80% is.
Yeah.
If that's our understanding of your directive.
Okay.
Is that right? Okay,
I was, for some reason, remembering that at 50%, but that's fine. That's great.
yeah.
Thank you.
Here in the transportation fund, this 970,000 isn't actually going to come to the city. So we're dropping that down to 0. And then, of course, down at the bottom, you see the frontage road bike lane project. We're adjusting a number there just to show that's our match.
Most of that is our match. The other 70,000 or so, that is our match. The other 17,000 are expenses we incurred before we could start, before we were into eligible expenses for the grant, for the federal money. So we had an environmental process we had to go through. We had some conceptual work and cost estimating done by the engineer. So, but most of the 87 is the 70,000 match.
And then, of course, an increase, we did receive contribution, and that's the amount, 49,733. So that changes.
From developers.
From developers,
Yeah.
right. So that changes the amount that we have for capital projects. So we're just making that adjustment there so that way there's not really an impact to the transportation fund.
So you're planning to give us a timeline and view of that project? When does that project start in earnest?
The frontage road. I sent you did I send you an email? No, I didn't. I was going to report on it tonight. Can you wait till city manager report?
That would be fine.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay, and here in the Utopia Fund, here's where you see where we do that 14,135, make the adjustment there
Yeah.
because we received that 192,707 is what we got in the increment, so we changed that tax increment. Sanitation Fund, there's that transfer from the general fund again, that 31,000 that we're not needing to do. And then in the drainage fund, we didn't budget for anything in impact fees or the interest. And we did have a transfer from the RDA of this 1,102 that we're just budgeting here in the drainage fund.
That was another expense that we identified to you at the time. We explained that we had charges in the RDA that could be transferred to the drainage fund. But the $11,002 came in I think in the fiscal year we're in now rather than the prior fiscal year. So we felt it was within the spirit of what you directed and was in harmony with that.
And these numbers here for the drainage impact fees and impact fee interest, that's about what we have received this year. So it's pretty close. Telecommunications utility. Okay, so this one we budgeted $210,000. We're already way over that, and we're estimating that it's going to be close to that $240,000. We're going a little bit high on that just to be safe. And then of course, that's just a pass through. So we budget the same number on the other side.
Is that higher because we've got more people signing up?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then here in the Whitaker Trust Fund, we didn't have anything budgeted for the grants and the event revenue. So we've put in a number. That 6,000 is pretty close to what they have brought in for their events. And now the events would be traditionally any of those things that were fundraisers in the past, the tea party. It's also the garden revenue. That's what's in that line there. And it's offset by the event supplies down below. We didn't budget anything at zero. We put that at 6,000. That'll help the budget be more in line, be balanced. And also there's that update to the RAP tax. We had only budgeted 19,500. That was the 5%, but then there was the amount that was recommended or that the council approved.
Yeah.
So that reflects that amount. And then they've asked for a use of fund balance. I believe that was for the bees and for the DVD, right? Project. And that's what that is, to use that fund balance. So that's offsetting down below. You can see those in the miscellaneous projects as well as the garden plot supplies. That's related to that use of fund balance. That 6,000 is related to event supplies, related to event revenue. And then these are the other capital projects. You can see that there. And those tie with that number up there, the contribution from the RAP tax. Is that all of my amendments for 18?
Let's see. So
We have RDA.
RDA, but that's separate.
Yeah.
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 Right.
Any questions?
Let me go back to the question that was asked about the telecommunications utility fund. Part of that increase is due to continued signups for Utopia. Another part of that is because we have people paying off their connection fee.
Yeah.
I was going to say, wow, that's 30,000 is a lot of additional signups
Yeah.
if that's just the
So
use fee for the month.
We keep 5% of the ones that are on a monthly, but the
Yeah.
payoffs we don't receive. That's just a
That just
pass
goes
through.
straight through.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that goes straight through.
So Steve,
Yeah.
on here, those are the proposed amendments, then you have public hearing and of course the resolution we have.
So you need to have a public hearing
Right.
on this?
Okay. We could do that tonight because we gave them notice, right?
Yes.
Okay. So are we at that point? So we now have on the amended fiscal year 18 budget, we have a public hearing. That means anyone that from the public can come to either the microphones and comment on this public hearing. If there's no comments, then I will close the public hearing and we will have further discussion on it. What has been discussed by Jake and Steve. Further discussion, or are we ready for a proposal on the resolution?
Motion to approve Resolution 2018-23 as detailed by staff.
We have motion to approve. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further debate or discussion?
I had one question. I thought when the county came and talked to us that they said it would be 16,000 to 17,000 for our election. So I was surprised to see the 7,000.
If we had two of them. We only had
We
one
have two.
election.
Oh,
That's
okay, but
because,
we only had one.
yeah, we had
All right. Just
candidates
the
drop
pri-
out.
Yeah.
And the original number was based on their assumption about how many cities would participate. And I think they ended up with all cities participating, so it also kind of lowered the per unit cost, if you will.
Okay.
That's why it's less than half of their estimate for the one election.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, any further comments? Okay, are we ready to, we have a motion and a second to approve resolution number 2018-23, amending the fiscal year 2018 budget. Are we ready for a roll call vote? Starting with Councilman McEwen.
Aye.
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 Resolution passes 5-0. Before we move to item 7, we have Randy Randall back with us. Do we want to include him?
That's for number 7.
That's 4-7. Okay, great. Randy, I just don't want you to have to spend your whole night here unless you want to. So,
I'd like to lead out on this one, though, and then have...
Yeah, well, so we'll go to item number 7, fee schedule amendments on the culinary water rates and garbage collection services. And Steve, you can lead that discussion.
Okay, I'll lead out, and Randy's here to answer questions about fluoride, et cetera. But back in 2011, the city council decided at that time that, whereas up to that time they were showing a base rate on the utility bill for water and a fluoride fee on the utility bill. And in 2011, the majority of the city council voted to combine those on the utility bill, but continue to show in the fee schedule those two fees separate. And then as increases were made to the water rates since then on several occasions, those increases were just applied percentage-wise across the board to the base rate, to the fluoride fee, and to the cost per thousand in our three-tiered rate structure for usage of water. And so that happened, I think, a couple of times from 2011 to 2016. And then in 2016, the council implemented the three-step rate increase of 10% per year to fund an ambitious plan of water main replacement. And again, then the decision was, let's just across the board increase everything 10%, the base rate, the fluoride fee, and the variable rate, the charge per 1,000 gallons. But we've continued to show on the utility bill itself the fluoride fee and the base rate as combined. Okay. So Stephanie, Councilwoman Ivy here some months ago, it was late last year maybe, raised the question of whether the amount in our fee structure that is showing for fluoride is actually representative of the cost of fluoride. And Randy and I reviewed that. Randy reviewed that situation and said, no, it is more than the actual cost of fluoride. So the natural response to that might be, well, then let's reduce that in the combined rate. But we're not recommending that because remember when in 2016, we made our projections of revenue needs based on, all right, we need to increase revenues by 10% a year, and the next year 10% in order to generate the revenue we need for this water main replacement plan. So what our recommendation is not one that will change the impact to the customer on their bill from what is already in place as the third step of that rate increase, which goes in effect at the end of this month. But in the fee schedule itself, it will no longer show a fluoride fee and a base rate fee as two separate fees. It'll be a combined base rate. It'll be merged together as a base rate. And we'll have a footnote that gives the estimated cost of fluoride on an annual basis so that we have a disclosure there for those that might be interested in what it's costing.
With a date of when it was
what
estimated.
year that estimate was, and I think the estimate that we've put in is a 2017 estimate, yeah. So that's what that change accomplishes in terms of the water rate structure. But the impact to the customer will be the same as was already put in place for the billing at the end of this month. Now, Randy's here if you want to ask any questions of him about the fluoride aspect, or Randy, you want to add
I do want to
something?
make one clarification. There is no facility being regenerated as far as money for the facilities. We haven't included any of our pump houses or reservoirs in our master plan, so we haven't included that as far as fluoride as well. So both of those are equal, not being included in any income that we're getting. So sometime down the road, we're going to have to look at what it's going to cost to replace our reservoirs and our wells. And there is some deterioration caused by the fluoride, but we've not taken those into account, so we felt like the stuff we've used is really the day-to-day replacement and keeping the facilities going as they exist today.
But to give you the full picture here too, our 10% increases are generating more than 10% in operating revenue. But that, what we can do with that is, let me back up a second. 2 years ago, when you made this decision about a 3-step increase, the proposal, the intent was, or the proposal in our revenue projections was that you do the 10%, 10%, 10%, and then the next couple of years would be maybe 3% increases. Well, the 10%, 10%, 10% has generated more than what we were projecting that would generate. But as Randy says, we didn't build into that capital need projection into the future, the water tank,
wells,
depreciation and so forth,
wells,
the eventual
stations.
replacement there. But my thinking is that the revenue is done well enough that you may not need the smaller increase next year that was envisioned 2 years ago. I think you can reevaluate next year. You don't have something automatically in place already. But 2 years ago, the projection was that we would need small increases next year and the following year just to keep up with inflation's impact. And my recommendation to you would be that you just look at it again in the next year and size it up again and decide.
Randy, with the deterioration that you've mentioned to the fluoride in the system, how much lifespan do you think that takes out of the system? A couple of years, or is it not quantifiable?
Well, it eats up a lot of our electrical stuff inside of our buildings and all the doorknobs, for example. But those types of things that are short-term, we've included in the cost. I'm talking structurally to the building. If you put fluoride on the floor, for example, it cuts through it like butter. So, you know, it's amazing how acidic it is, and it does eat it up. But we generally don't get it on the floor, so it doesn't eat it up. We have got it on the floor, and it has cut it. But really, it does shorten the life. But I think we'll probably get as much life out of the structure as...
So we didn't artificially shorten the life by adding fluoride to the system?
Yeah, I would say not.
Okay.
Some of the stuff within the building is being shortened, and we are replacing that with the funds that we're creating. So it's really the structure we're talking about. We had to build a whole other room for the fluoride. It's interesting that we did that up front, and now the state's requiring that of all cities. Most cities didn't do that up to begin with, and now they're requiring them to do it. And so we included that as we built it. We made all of our pump houses large enough they would be housed in separate rooms because of the harshness that the atmosphere has with the fluoride. So,
do we have to keep the fluoride?
The citizens voted for it. There may be a referendum in the legislature to talk about maybe having another vote. I think every 4 years they're allowed to re-vote. We've passed every time just over 50% every time we voted. So,
and that's
we voted more than once?
Right? County vote. It's county vote. County-wide vote.
Were there 2 votes, Randy?
Yeah, there have been 2 votes.
Yeah,
really?
And it was a county-wide vote, and the outcome was
correct.
County-wide, imposed on all the cities unless the city could show that it was
Totally could run off without it.
was not receiving any water from a...
Which is not 100% true, because Woods Cross does receive water from Weber Basin, but Weber Basin agreed to feed them water without fluoride in it.
So, Randy, 96.5 was what we estimate the cost to be last year?
Yeah, correct.
So are you saying that one of your employees is $45,000? We don't have more than one employee working on it at all?
Well, the average, we put it together. You may have 2 employees doing the same thing, but we figure it's about a half of an employee.
Okay, all right.
Is what we're doing, because when we do fluoride, you have to have 2 people because it's unsafe from the standpoint, if you spill it on you, have to take a bath. We have showers for them to do that, and if they get it in their eyes and so forth, you want to have a second person. Every time we take deliveries, we have to have 3 people there for the deliveries to make sure that it's safe. So we just looked at it from an average. We figured that's about what it would take. It was a half a person in order to provide the fluoride.
So total employee cost was $45,000 using.
Correct.
I was thinking it was half of one employee's salary, and I thought you'd got to have more than one working on it. So that makes sense.
But it's the time.
The $45,000 is half of a full employee plus benefits.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you may have, yes, you would have, many times you'll have to have 2, and we train all of our employees as well. So all of our employees are trained in the safety of the fluoridation. So we add all those up and figure it's about half a person.
Have we had any significant accidents or incidents?
No, we've had leaks, and our facilities are built with leak detection devices, and we've never had anything that's been significant at all. Farmington, for example, received a delivery, and they brought, it wasn't acid, and it reacted when they put it in with the acid. It reacted and created a very noxious fumes, and they sent many of their public works employees to the hospital. And so from some of that, there has become more importance on making sure that you find out whether what they're delivering really is fluoric acid. So we've not had any problems. We've always checked the stuff that comes, and we look at the labeling and make sure that it is what it says it is. But there has been several times when it's not been the right product in other cities. But we handle it very safely. So we have secondary containment. In fact, 2 weeks ago, we had the state of Utah come out, and they did training at our facilities for fluoride. Because of the way we build our fluoride stations, they've become kind of a model for the state as far as all the safety devices that we use. So,
did we charge the state for that?
No, we didn't. No, we like to help to make sure everybody's doing it safely.
So do the dentists love us or hate us?
Actually, the dentists are mad at us.
Oh, are they?
They are.
That was a joke, but it sounds like
no,
it's
that's
serious.
the truth. I'm telling you the truth. We get a lot of calls from the dentists, and the call is that we're not putting enough fluoride in the water. When we first put it in, we put it at 0.9 parts per million. We've reduced down to 0.6, and what's happening is that even the state has recognized that the caries have not gone down very much. And the problem, what's happening is the students and young people are not drinking enough water to get the caries down. And so they're asking us to increase the dose, but we're following what regulation we've been asked to do. The county's the one that sets the regulation of the dose that we use. But we do, I've had probably 20 calls in the last 5 years from dentists saying, you're not putting enough fluoride in the water. And it's very stringent on what we're supposed to put in. And so we actually have it tested ourselves. The county actually tests it to make sure we're within the range that they've asked us to be. Because if you get too much, you get molding, their teeth start to molt, the young kids' teeth molts, or they don't get enough. And they really don't get enough, I think, is the problem, because they're drinking milk or they're drinking pop. I think pop, and then a lot of them are drinking bottled water that doesn't have fluoride. So it's sad that it's not been quite as good as they wished it had been. So
that's because the fluoride isn't good for you.
Yeah. Well, that's one that we debate, but it is. A lot of people, it really is amazing how many, every time I go to the dentist, they always get after me and say, well, you're not putting enough in there. And I said, I'm putting in what we're asked to put in there. So. I would say that the complexity of the rates, when it was changed many years ago, trying to not create such a disruption. If you change one or two of the components, it's going to make a whole different income stream. And so to make it simpler, they tried to just blend it over the entire rate structure. And I think it's fairly fair. We've talked about it and looked at it, and I think it's within reason doing it the way we're doing it. I think Steve would agree. So,
yeah.
Thanks, Randy.
Okay.
Appreciate it. So Steve, we have two proposals here. Do you have
well, do you want to act on the one since we've addressed it on water rates, and then go to the garbage collection?
So we will in our material we had culinary water rates resolution number 2018-21. Do I have a motion on that?
So moved to approve as stated.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Let's do a roll call vote with Councilwoman Meekum starting.
Aye.
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 Resolution passes 5-0. Next we go to the rubbish collection services. I just came from England. It's rubbish, not garbage. Garbage collection services.
This was reviewed during the public hearing 2 weeks ago, so I don't know if you want to, any reason you want to go over this again or just act on it? Okay.
Any reason to go over it again? Okay,
I'd
so.
make a motion to approve Resolution 2018-20 as previously discussed.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call vote, starting with Councilwoman Fillmore.
Aye.
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 Motion passes 5-0. Okay, item 8, do we want to break before we go to that one, or do we want to keep forging ahead?
Let's do item 8 fast.
Let's what?
Let's do item 8 fast. We've gone through all
I
of
think
this
you,
plenty.
I think I perceive that you want to have another session next week, but we do, like Lisa says, you need to act on the certified tax rate.
We have one resolution there, item C, that's right.
Right. My intent would be to actually end up tabling A and D and work on B and C, because those are pretty straightforward.
We can't do B unless we know what A is.
Now, the judge's salary is set by.
Yeah, but it's dependent upon what raises.
Oh, that's right.
So, yeah, if
we
you
have
would,
to table everything
Yeah.
but C.
you'd need a motion to table A, B, and D, and a motion to approve item C on the certified tax rate. And if you'd like to give staff any direction on that tabling and schedule the next meeting.
So Lisa, we had to have the certified tax rate for you by
Thursday.
June 22nd,
the
Friday.
22nd, and we have to have the others by,
June 30th.
okay.
Those used to be the same, by the way, and the legislature changed the June 22nd for budget adoption to June 30, but they didn't change the tax rate adoption. One of several inconsistencies we've noticed and would like to see changed in the law.
I don't know, I kind of like keeping the tax rate adoption earlier because that pressures the county to get us the tax rate.
I agree.
It's true.
I would make a motion that we approve 2018-14 adopting the certified tax rate.
Second.
We have a motion and a second on resolution number 2018-14, adopting the certified tax rate. Let's do a roll call vote, starting with Councilwoman Ivy.
Aye.
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 Motion passes 5-0. So on those other two resolutions and ordinance, then are we looking then to set a further meeting on that?
Next Tuesday, I'm presuming?
That's what I would propose.
So we talked about this in the work session, but I guess we have to come up with some actual staff direction that goes along with the tabling. Since I'm the one who's kind of pushing to push this activity off, I'll make the motion to table ordinance 2018-12 employee compensation, resolution 2018-13, and resolution 2018-15 until the next meeting, which we are tentatively scheduling for June 26th.
Special meeting.
Special meeting.
At what time?
I don't know.
7?
5:30.
People rather have.
I'm not going to include that part of
do
the
we need extra
resolution.
time
Yeah, I make that separate of the resolution, or separate of the motion. Pick the time.
I'll second.
So we have a motion and a second to table till next Tuesday, item A, B, and D. Correct. Do we need a roll call vote on that, Lisa, or just a?
On that one, no.
Okay. Go ahead.
George said that he was driving it, and I'm not sure that's totally true, but.
Oh, I just want to take all the knives on this one. You know.
Okay, well, that's fine. I was, however, very chagrined by some of Randy's comments. Because that's certainly not the message I was intending to share. And that doesn't change my mind about what we're doing, but I would like us to consider something formal from the council to employees in terms of recognition and appreciation. Because I do, in spite of the fact that I agree totally with the impetus and have helped to fuel it, I do believe we have a tremendous number of excellent, committed employees. And if we have sent them the wrong message, then I think we at least need to make an attempt to correct it. And I'm not sure exactly what it is. I don't know if it's several of us met and helped cook for the police department annual party a couple of weeks ago. I don't know if we do something for other departments, either department by department or one department at a time. I would like to do something because what Randy said has been felt is not, I believe, what any of the council would like to communicate.
Right.
I agree with that.
I agree, and I think it goes also beyond the discussion that we had in the work session. Some of the comments he shared definitely indicate that there's a larger issue. We're not trying to create special groups inside the city.
No, we're not.
And I'm just going to add to the problem with whenever you deal with payroll and you're dealing with people's lives, there's always going to be emotion involved in it. And it's really hard to put this into I said earlier, I'm trying to put this into a soundbite, and the more I've thought about it, really, to me, it comes down to is anytime you see an assumption, you have a responsibility to challenge it and validate it. We've done that in the past, and Jake is sitting in a role that didn't exist prior to some challenging of some assumptions and some further validation. We may come out of this activity with absolutely no change. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think we're going to see some adjustments that we're going to be surprised by, both directions. But I don't want the city employees to think that this is a reflection on the work ethic of individuals. This is an organizational assumption on pay rates that I'm trying to challenge and make sure it's right. Because if we get this wrong year after year and do the same thing, we get the same results. And if we are underpaying employees, then I'm fully justified in going back to the public and saying, we have data from industry professionals that tell us we're not retaining our people at the right rates. If we're the other direction, then I have justification to push back in a budget hearing and say we're paid adequately for the positions. So that's where I'm trying to come from on that. And unfortunately, in our world today, it's whatever perception is that comes out may not necessarily be what it is, but I do want to make sure that, and I will talk to Steve, any city employee who wants to chew on me for a while about this issue through misperception or otherwise, I'm willing to talk to anyone in whatever size groups, 1 to full city staff with tomatoes in hand, and explain the rationale behind this. And it's not meant to denigrate anyone. It's meant to make sure we do the best we can with the funds we're given as a city. So I extend that offer to anyone who wants to talk more about it. And in terms of the staff direction piece, what I'm looking for is for next week, if we can get a potential proposal for a salary analysis that will include a review of the compensation plan as we have it specified for the ordinance, and that I would request that that individual be a certified professional, at least the Society of Human Resource Management Professionals, that they have industry certification.
Okay.
Okay.
Kind of a long-winded sort of motion thing.
I would be willing to then make a motion.
Now, George made a motion and I seconded it, and then you talked and then he talked.
That's right.
That's where we are right now.
Okay.
Thank you for keeping it straight.
Thank you.
So do we have an amended motion, or is it the same motion
That's
still?
the same motion.
I think it's the same motion,
Okay.
other than if you want that.
If there's any clarity that you feel is necessary, Bill, it's totally
Do we have to
fine.
have a separate motion or just the direction to staff to work on getting someone to do the review? Maybe that's just you've given the direction and so it's there.
Right, I think that's the crux of the
Yeah,
motion.
I think our motion was just to table these till next week.
Right, and then
He was
the
just-
staff direction is the appending to that same motion, but in this case, we'll have to deal with it because it's already been seconded. The staff direction would be a different component.
Correct.
Let me ask for clarification, George.
Yes.
Certified professional, there's
They should have accreditation with the Society of Human Resource Management Professionals. I think that's the name of the organization.
yeah, I think there's-
SHRM.
There may also be some specialty certification as a compensation specialist. That I don't know, though. So, but at least a Society of Human Resource.
Right.
Okay.
Since I intend on using this as the baseline for which way we go, I want them to be competent and certified.
Okay. I guess we might possibly. We may even bring you more than one. We'll see what we can generate.
Yeah, it'd be good to get more one.
So we had a motion and a second to table those to a meeting next Tuesday. What time did we decide?
We didn't yet.
Do we want to decide that?
Yes, I think we should.
Do we want to go earlier than 7? Do we want to go, because do you think we're going to be on it a while, or what's people's feelings? What's your schedules look like?
Well, one thing is if we go earlier, at least then some of them don't have to drive home and drive back.
So,
Okay.
some, if we go earlier, who would drive home and drive
So-
back?
Staff.
Staff.
Lisa.
So can we get here at 5:30? Does that allow, or is 5 that we've gone?
I can go either one. I would make one observation. That's the day of the primary election. I don't think that changes anything, but I just mentioned that.
Just make sure to put your ballot in the mail on the way or drop it at the polling
I
station.
think you have to have it in the mail Monday.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you got to vote in person that day.
Drop it in the box here,
I think they take the box Monday, don't they?
Monday, yeah, sometime Monday.
As far as the timing, I'm fine with it, however
Yeah,
early people want to go.
5:30?
5:30.
Sure.
Can I, let's vote on that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Delayed aye there, but I liked it.
Not very enthusiastic. I had fun that night.
Could I make a request, because that will go out to the public, right? Can I make a request on that we also put in there, like we talked about tonight, a closed meeting if necessary, so in case we
Yes.
need to discuss any certain personnel?
Postpone the one that you were going to have tonight to that night.
Yeah.
Well,
I think
Or
we're
no,
still on,
we could still do one
We're still
tonight.
having one tonight, too.
we're still on track for tonight. We're actually ahead of schedule.
let's make the most of that.
No, not that schedule. Katie's looking at the actual schedule. No, just by our perceived schedule. We're ahead.
Yeah, it's only 8:45.
Yeah.
But we'll put that on there as well too, just in case, right?
I think that's an excellent idea to put that on there just in case.
Completely agree.
Okay.
Do we have any approximation as to how long this meeting will last?
Tonight?
Tuesday?
No, next
Oh,
Tuesday.
Tuesday.
I'm having to rearrange plans, and I would like an end time, please.
I don't know.
I know we can do it. I know we can stick to an end time.
Honestly, I don't know that I can put an end time on a budget adoption. I don't know.
I personally would like to see it not go more than a couple hours myself.
Yeah, we've had like 15 sessions on this, so what are we at now? I don't want to exaggerate too much, but.
About 5,
Yeah.
I think 5 is the max.
2 hours. 7:30?
I don't know.
We're not going to give it in blood.
Of course not, but let's at least get it in
It's
writing.
a goal. Fine.
5:30 to 7:30. All right, I will put that in my calendar. Thank you.
That will be our goal. We ready to move to item number 9? This is the municipal code amendment on the National Electrical Code. And Lisa, I think you were going to discuss this.
Yes. Thank you. As you know, we just wrapped up another legislative session, so we're working our way through the 2018 legislative bills. This one was actually brought to my attention by our building official. He said that the state adopted the new NEC, the National Electrical Code Edition 2017. So staff is just recommending an amendment to our building regulations to adopt that state code 2017 edition of the NEC, and we are required by law to adopt the same code that the state adopts, so this is just a formality, really.
Lisa, were you able to check on that, whether we can opt out of specific parts of the building code? I emailed you, I texted you, I think, a couple of weeks ago.
No, I don't remember that.
I was meeting with a legislator who said that in her city, they opt out of the parts they don't like. And that she was under the impression that if, as long as we specified it, we could opt out of specific parts of the building code. I don't know if that...
Well, it's very regulated, so the general framework is that the state adopts the construction codes, and all cities have to adopt and abide by those construction codes. But under that general framework, then the state goes in and adopts their own state amendments, and the municipalities are also subject to all of those state amendments. And then the third tier is that certain sections a city can seek an amendment, and you have to go to the building board, the state building board, to seek that amendment. But then there's also exclusions from that amendment process sometimes, for instance, for fire sprinkling and other things that cities would, of course, want to get out of. But so there's some limitations on what you can exclude yourself from. I don't think it's just a carte blanche. If we don't like these sections, we can exclude ourselves. And it is a formal process to the state building board.
Okay.
And I think they meet a few times a year.
Okay, good to know.
So it is a complicated process. I think it used to be spelled out a little bit clearer than it is now in the state statute, but it's a go here and then look over here, and it's kind of a difficult process. But
So you'd say chances are really high you'd be preempted by the state in most cases anyway?
yes.
Okay.
But there are sections that you can. I mean, some have snow load.
Her city has done it, and they've gotten
Sure.
Wind load, capacity, you know, those kinds of amendments that some cities do have. But in the last legislative session, I do remember they actually repealed some of that local authority.
Okay.
So it depends on what specific code, because remember there's about 5 state codes, the IRC, so then you'd have to know what section you wanted to amend, and we could look into that.
Okay.
I'm sorry I missed the text.
That's right. I'll look for it. Thank you.
Any further questions for Lisa on this ordinance?
I'd motion to adopt ordinance 2018-16, amending for the 2017 edition of the National Electrical Code as adopted by the state.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adopt ordinance number 2018-16. Let's do a roll call vote, starting with Councilman Ince.
Nay.
Aye.
Aye.
I liked that. Nay.
I'm sorry, it's just ridiculous.
Did you have a vote?
I did. I said nay.
Oh, okay, sorry, I missed it.
It passed 3-2.
Motion passes 3-2.
What would have happened if we hadn't passed it?
We would have to comply with the code anyway. I would advise the building official, so.
But you're really glad we didn't.
Okay, all right. You gentlemen having fun in the audience yet? Okay, great. Now we'll go to item number 10, Mayor's Report. 3 weeks ago, I met with Congressman Stewart. His office called up and wanted to meet with me. One of his staffers, Rhonda Perks, I had made contact with, and with him being our federal congressman, he likes to meet with the mayors on an annual basis. And I brought up 3 things with him. The things that I discussed was one item that I'd send out text to each one of you if you had anything you wanted me to discuss with him. The Councilman Entz brought up about when we were at the why don't you give him a refresher on the opioid thing?
I asked particularly, I think, about the federal action on the opioid. I don't remember my specific at the moment, but
from
St.
George.
From the meeting at ULCT in St. George, there is legislation that actually appears, based on the attorney's interpretation, to work to create or extend the opioid, what is called the opioid epidemic, excuse me. And I wanted to know what his perspective was on that legislation. And I think I gave you what the act was. I don't remember what it is. I've got it in my notes. I've sent it to everybody coming out of that meeting. And it's probably one of those situations that is a law of unintended consequence.
But wasn't one of the concerns, because you went to that session while I went to another session, one of the concerns was potential lawsuits against municipalities?
Oh yeah, and then the other thing is that municipalities, along with counties, Salt Lake County and Salt Lake City being 2 of them, are filing actions against the opioid manufacturers for recoveries, and we probably should at least consider getting on the bandwagon, and whether or not the federal government was going to do anything about it.
Yeah. So I brought it up with them, and that was one that they had not heard about. And so I gave them some information, and I need to follow up with Rhonda on that. So that was one issue I brought up. Second issue I brought up was affordable housing, and if that was the concern the federal government at all as far as regulations, and he and his 2 staffers said no, it did not. That's one that we just take up at the state level. And the third issue I brought up was the Army Corps of Engineers, and specifically issues that we have had in the past and a potential penalty amount. And basically, he was more than happy to interfere if we wanted him to. But at the same time, he also said you might want to feel lucky that that's all they might want to do to you. So
if he can ask $100,000 plus question and get that number reduced, have him go for it.
He mainly said I've seen him have people tear out things that were put in the past as well too. So if you want me to do something, I will. But realize he's seen that type of thing take place, and
so he doesn't feel that he can be successful in that. Don't poke the bear.
I think that's what he's saying.
That's what he felt.
He gives it a 50-50. Don't poke the bear.
Exactly. So, but we can poke the bear if we want. But
if he's not better than 50-50, don't poke that bear.
Happy to take it up. So, and that's all I had the time to discuss with him. It was 20 minutes, but I also have that contact with the other staffers and future meetings with them as well too. So, anyway, that was mainly what we discussed in the time that I had, and that was my report. So. On to item number 11. liaison report from Councilwoman Meekum on the Trails Committee and Davis County Council of Governments Transportation Committee.
Well, you guys pretty much know what's been going on the Trails Committee. They'd really like their bike trail up there as soon as possible. I've assured them that we're working on the plan as best as we can and got plans to keep it moving so it doesn't get stalled, and they seem to be happy with that. A little concerned about the striping on Main Street, and so because we have the big plan coming out, they're kind of wanting to find out what that's going to be, and I don't know timeline how that's going to turn out, because they don't want to have it striped at a certain distance and then find out that this plan tells us to do it at a different distance. But I don't think the plan's going to be in before we need to let the state know on that one.
Can I update that, Robin? I've sent an email to Chris Peterson asking what is the deadline for us to make that decision in connection with your bidding of that or overlaying next year, hoping it's late this fall, end of this year or something. And I also inquired of Wasatch Front about the timing of the study you're referring to, the Tri-City Active Transportation Plan, because the thinking is that if they're on board soon enough, that consultant can, Wasatch Front agreed they could have that consultant move up that piece of advice to us to meet the UDOT's deadline. They haven't selected the consultant yet, but when they do, when that's been done, then we'll explore that possibility rather than having to go out and get a consultant that the Trails Committee was asking for. Let's see if we can get it covered under this this grant program we've already got. So I'm waiting to hear from Chris Peterson and for the Wasatch Front to move forward with the process of selecting the consultant. They've got to put out an RFQ or whatever it is for that.
That would be really great. I think if we communicated to them the reason that we want to keep it moving and be rushed as soon as possible, because it would be nice and a shame not to take advantage of that striping that's going to happen anyway and have it be the appropriate width. If for some reason that proves impossible, I would suggest that the Trails Committee have a role in recommending to us the request that we make to UDOT.
That's already been done. I mean, that's what they came to the Trails Committee for. Staff's making the recommendation on that.
Staff came to the presented the recommendation to the Trails Committee, and they had some disagreement, or at least questioned, and wanted to get some other.
So the Trails Committee is working on that currently.
Okay,
yes.
great.
Yeah.
And that won't be coming back to the council. That will be between staff and the Trails Committee and UDOT and everyone else. So
well, it'll come to council at some point later on.
I'm concerned a little bit after being on the Transportation Committee. I know that UDOT puts traffic first. So it'll be interesting to see how we come out on this one, but we're going to try.
So Robin, one further comment. The Wasatch Front staff member who's involved with these studies said that he would also try to contact UDOT and get a handle on when the decision has to be made.
Excellent, excellent, because I'd really like to see that we could get an input on that if there's any way we can.
And what staff member is that?
What's the guy's name?
Jory?
Not Jory, no. I can't remember the name. But he's working with the alternative transportation projects.
As just as an aside, I don't know if you're looking at notes, the project that we have Bruce doing, trying to gather information up on the hillside, is getting
that's my
fair.
report. Wait for my report.
That'll be Steve's report.
All right. Okay.
So on the Transportation Committee, a lot of it hasn't had a lot to do with us. We did have a presentation on the Inland Port Authority. You know, they've called a special session for that, but the ULCT is very much against it and feeling like the state is imposing its will, so we'll have to watch that one close.
That was a really good way of putting it, by the way.
Do you have any
A lot of
comments about
a lot of
that?
what we're working on is still the Highway 89, and as you know, now there's been a lawsuit against that, so it's slowed the Highway 89 being changed so that, but they feel like it won't be a long delay, but then that's going to be depending on what the courts do. So, and just trying to think if there was anything. Like I said, most of it's been up in that direction. Talking about doing a toll road up Little and Big Cottonwood Canyon, which would be something new for us.
Hate it.
We already did the Golden Spoke ride, and I thought that turned out to be great. And so we'd been organizing that. So I think that's pretty much all we've got for the.
Did we have a couple riders on
Yeah,
that
I
Gold
went and
Spoke?
Tammy went.
That's what I thought. Wonderful.
It was a beautiful day. Beautiful day for a ride.
Was Mayor Talbot there with his electric bike?
Yes.
He and his wife bought electric bikes
Yes,
just for that
just
ride.
for that ride. Yes, they were there, and it was a nice ride, and it was, I thought, well attended.
Good, good.
Lisa, do you have any comments on the inland port? I'm still trying to get my mind around that whole thing.
That looked like a
And
no
maybe
comment
not, maybe not tonight, but I would appreciate hearing your view of it at some point in time in the relatively near future.
Sure. I'd love to have that conversation.
Councilwoman Meekum Moore?
That's pretty much all I got.
Okay. All right, we move on to item number 12, City Manager's Report. Steve?
Let me first share something that relates to what the mayor said about the wetlands and the Army Corps of Engineers. We've made some progress there in this sense that the Army Corps was obligated under the law to inform the EPA of our violations, to see if the EPA wanted to take on the enforcement of that matter. Fortunately, EPA declined, and so it's in the hands of the Army Corps here locally to work with us to come up with an acceptable solution. So what that is likely to be, as I've told you before, is buying into a wetlands bank. So I don't think we're going to be facing any harsh penalties, but we will have to have what he called a after-the-fact action plan or a post-mitigation plan or some term he used. He said we have the option of either ripping up what's there and restoring the wetlands or proposing something that mitigates the 2 drainage areas that we put into culverts along the south side of the original park and along the west end of the original park, which is now parking lot. So I will be meeting with Dennis Winger, a wetlands consultant or specialist, and putting together a proposal to buy into a wetlands bank.
So do we hold actual title at that point to wetlands?
Will we own title to it?
Yes. I mean, it's real property, right?
Do we own title? Do we? I don't know how it works.
I just want to put a sign somewhere out there that says property of Centerville, all ordinances enforced.
No trespassing.
No trespassing.
But the first, the first hurdle we got over is that the EPA is not wanting to step in and do some kind of harsh thing to us. So fortunately, we'll be working with the local Army Corps folks on that.
So it may be a different figure than what we've talked about in the past?
Well, I'm going to guess it's probably, they'll require maybe 2 acres, which is that in that neighborhood of $110,000 for 2 acres. But I'm just speculating. I don't think the local guy is going to try to exact a pound of flesh in addition to the mitigation. Okay. Then the Foothills Planning Update, I attached to Nova several documents that would inform you of the 2 meetings that the task group has held so far. We're meeting monthly. We have a 3rd meeting next week. And there's several assignments given out at the last meeting that will be reported at this next meeting. Along with those assignments will be a report from the engineer, city engineer, about the drainage study. So it'll be kind of the preliminary or draft report, if you will, to this committee, this task group. And that report will come forward to the council soon thereafter. So that's been progressing, and the intent was to have that done by the end of June, so I think we're on track there. One of the assignments that's being reported back next week is some cost information to implement this short-term or more immediate restriction of the rapid response. That's the term, which hasn't been all that rapid, but it's relatively speaking, an idea of how we could establish a fence up there to contain the activity within the bowl area. So that will be reported next week. We might be able to do it for that $3,000 that you appropriated or approved us to use. So unless you got questions, that's it. You can read the minutes if you haven't done that and see the planning process that we're following overall on that colored chart.
My next door neighbor happens to be a paraglider who got contacted a couple of weeks ago while he was up there.
By the survey, the questionnaire,
survey.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
And
I should have mentioned that in my report.
So I haven't fully read the notes, but I don't see any mention of that. He tells me that on a Saturday like last Saturday, there are 300 paragliders that come off the mountain in Centerville, which may make them one of the largest user groups. And I've encouraged him to go to the Trails Committee meeting. He asked about someone getting on the Trails Committee. I kind of explained how that would work, told him there weren't any openings at the moment, which I believe is correct.
Yeah.
But I look up and I see parasailers frequently, and yeah, there's a lot of them. But when he said there were 250 to 350 on a Saturday this time of year, that just blew my socks off.
Yeah.
So you might mention that.
Well, the paraglider, establishing an area for them to land is part of the potential second.
Yeah, it's the junior high.
Don't change it.
The junior high.
Yeah, they don't land on the hillside coming down.
It's one of my favorite things about where I live is sitting in my backyard watching them come right over me.
Yeah.
Like them coming down there.
So the survey that you referred to was expanded to include some weekday, and we'll get the results to you at some point. I think that's going to be reported again next week at the update of that survey. Okay. Any other questions about that? Okay. Frontage Road Federal Project. The bids were opened last week. Myself and the city engineer were sent the blind results, which means they don't identify who the bidders are, but they put them in order from lowest to highest. There were 7 bids, which was more than we thought they'd get, which was good. And the low bidder was 81% of the engineer's estimate, and that was really good. So I sent a message to UDOT asking them to confirm, yes, this will we'll be within our budget, and et cetera. And when will we know who the bidder is? Because that's not known yet. They haven't announced that. We don't know if it's we know that what the bidder who got our job on the frontage road bid. We don't know if he's the low bidder, but Kevin thinks that even if he wasn't the low bidder general contractor may very well. We are going to suggest the idea of using as a subcontractor this other contractor that has our other job on the frontage road, which would lead to the outcome that we really want, and that's
A joint.
an overlay of the whole thing without some joints in it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Any
I was gonna
questions?
say, do they verify that the bids are legitimate?
Well, they look at that as UDOT, and that's why they also sent it to our city engineer to get his opinion whether it looked like it was reasonable, and he concluded that it was, based on our experience. And the next lowest bidder was like 85% of the engineer's estimate, so.
So
you
it's
had-
not a huge outlier.
Right, right. Okay, any questions about that? Okay, that's my report.
Thank you, Steve. Item number 13, we did talk, there was potentially a closed meeting for an annual performance review. I'm wondering if we want to do that after our meeting next week, or if you still want to do that tonight after we do our RDA meeting.
Well, I was going to suggest that we adjourn to the RDA with the intent of returning back to the city council at the conclusion of the RDA meeting, because we do have some folks who are here probably to comment publicly on the RDA budget. So rather than have them wait through a private or a closed meeting, I'd prefer to do that.
We were going to do that. I just wanted to see if we'd want to do the closed meeting tonight or do it next week still.
Which would be after the RDA is what you were saying. If
Right,
it's
so
tonight.
I'd say we just adjourn to the, and convene the RDA, and then when we, with the intent to return to the city council meeting, and then if we decide at that point we're not holding it, we don't have to.
Okay, let's do it.
So a motion to adjourn to the, adjourn the city council meeting to convene the RDA.
Could we have a 5-minute break in there?
The RDA meeting in 5 minutes, 10 minutes from now.
All in favor?
Aye.
Hey, I did search, you did send me a text. Sorry.
No, it's okay. It was in the middle of the, it was as I was walking to the police funeral. She was there when I was there. Let's
Yeah, if, you know, if there's specific things, where is she from?
She's from Syracuse.
And
And they have specific things. She said, if we can't get out of whatever it is that's preventing the